everybody. Welcome to OP Entertainment. I'm Omar Darwish.
And I'm Pratik Cherian.
And today we have a very special guest. Everybody welcome Khori Walker.
Hi.
He's our resident Dune expert. The only one out of the three of us that have read the book in full.
One time.
Basically, the only person I know that's read the book. At all. So.
I have one. I've read not the whole book. I have a question for you. Do you feel like, number one, like you're satisfied with this adaptation? And number two, do you feel like people need to read the book to understand this adaptation?
I have mixed feelings.
Okay.
Yeah, I am satisfied with it, first off.
Okay.
It was definitely what I wanted from an adaptation of this.
Okay.
Do you need to read it? I don't know. I feel like I understood it more by reading it, so.
Did you feel like there was anything in particular, without going into spoilers? We're going to go spoiler free just because we don't want to spoil the whole movie, even though you could read the book if you wanted to. But do you feel like there was any scenes in particular, any plot points in particular that you feel like would be hard to understand for the uninitiated Dune?
I feel like overall lore was missing from this.
Okay.
You know, I'm gonna jump on that point because throughout, and maybe this is coming off the heels of us like doing Marvel reviews and being like, should this have been a movie? Should this have been a TV show? Okay. That's kind of what I felt with this, where especially in the beginning of the movie, there were so many times where I'm like, I wish this was like a TV series, so they would have had time to explain things and go into lore. And like, I felt, especially in the beginning, I felt like this movie really needed that. And then it kind of picked up in the middle. And then towards the end, I was almost like, you know what? I kind of wish this was 3 movies instead of 2, because I felt like there were natural endpoints that were earlier in the movie where I'm like, if you end there, like, this is paced a lot better. You know,
I will agree with you, and I will say I would say this covered half of the book. I'm only like 100 pages into the book, but this covered where you were thinking the book was gonna, or where the movie was gonna end halfway. Mm-hmm. I thought there's a certain moment that I thought it was gonna end earlier with the loss of a character. I'm not gonna say who it is, but they went way beyond that, to the point where I was like, okay, so like, what are they saving for part 2? Yeah. But you've read the whole book. You feel like there's a lot more they can dig into, right?
Oh yeah, there's gonna be plenty.
Plenty? Okay. I didn't even mention that I love this movie.
Of course you did.
I wanted to love it so bad. I got kind of worried. When I had heard stuff about the ending, like kind of just ends in the beginning, and like this is really just like the first act of something bigger. And I really didn't feel that. I feel like this was the first half of a story. I
did feel like a good portion of the beginning of this movie, so let's say the first like hour 15 of it, what did feel like a lot of setup and a lot of like moving pieces into place, which is
did you feel like it was an exposition dump? Because I feel like that's what Denis does so well, is he doesn't shove it in your face.
Yeah, I feel it's kind of weird because in some cases I felt like I wanted more exposition, kind of like I was saying earlier around like the lore and maybe some backgrounds and characters and things. It's like I would like a little bit more exposition here, but I did feel like they did a good job of never just giving us straight exposition. There was never any scene where it's just, all right, here's all of the stuff you need to know.
Now, that being said, do you feel like there's a lot you didn't know that you felt like, man, I really need some exposition here?
I don't think there was anything that I needed exposition. I think that a little bit more would have been nicer as far as making this world feel a little bit more lived in. Okay. It's kind of it's a thing with fantasy stories. I mean, you can look at Star Wars, you can look at Lord of the Rings, you can look at really any of the major they all have a point of view character, right? Like our intro into this world.
Yeah.
And Paul Atreides is supposed to be that. I just
kind of.
And that's kind of where I was. I'm like, I felt like if I had a point of view character that could help me like get into this world, it would have been an easier transition where I don't know that I would have felt all of those things.
So when I first started reading the book, I got about 30 pages in, and I brought it to you. And I was like, hey, man, what is up with all these just words that don't make sense? And like quiz-ass Haberach and Ma Dib and all this stuff. I'm like, is this natural? Like, is this what Lord of the Rings was like? Because I didn't read Lord of the Rings. Like, what is this? And I do kind of feel like the movie kind of did the same thing. It doesn't explain itself. You kind of you figure it out as you go along, and I kind of enjoyed that a lot. Was it action packed? No, but I wasn't really expecting that. I was expecting great performances. I was expecting great cinematography. I was expecting a great sound mix. I wasn't disappointed by any of them. The sound mix wasn't as good as Blade Runner 2049, which I'd been hearing this was like the best sound mix. The score was pretty good. I'll say the score was maybe just as good as Blade Runner 2049. but the sound mix itself, it just didn't have that like bass, and we were kind of talking about this. It just felt like they took the bass out.
But going back to something you said earlier, just about like you kind of have to figure it out as you go in. And you had asked me coming out of the theater whether I was happy I saw it in theaters versus HBO Max. And like sound quality and like the theater experience aside, to me that was the biggest thing, is seeing it in the theater kind of locked you into like, all right, you're going to sit here and figure it out.
Yeah.
If I was just watching it on HBO Max, like where I wasn't like dedicated to finishing it, I don't know that the movie did enough to like grab me and be like, you need to finish this.
Because I would say the complete opposite. This, other than his last movie, Blade Runner 2049, I've never felt more immersed in a movie than in this movie. Like, I really felt... Denis has this thing where, like, from beginning, opening frame to end frame, you're just locked in. Or at least for me. You're right, there were scenes where... There's a scene where a couple characters are in a tent, and I felt like it dragged for way too long, especially because it was only like a 5-minute, 10-minute scene, and it felt like it was half the movie.
There's a couple desert scenes where I'm just like, all right, can we pick this up? Can we get them to where they need to go? Like,
I'll tell you what though, maybe I don't see enough shots of like the actual desert, but I really felt like this was a different planet. The whole time. It felt amazing.
I thought some of the CGI there, like especially in like from up above when you were like sweeping over the desert, I thought some of the CGI was a little iffy at points.
Really?
I wonder if maybe it just looks like CGI, because I bet you a lot of those shots are real. Like a lot of those shots. I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff that you can't practically do. But Denis is
the
is
giant
a fan of,
sandworm, was that real? That was the real one?
That was all practical. That
Come on, Pratik. You know they don't have sandworms anymore.
was actually Vin Diesel as the
I wanted to ask you though, how did you feel about the shield system that they use?
I feel like
Translated well?
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't at all how I imagined it in my head, but it was what it was supposed to be. Like, it was exactly how the book describes it.
What would you say the standout characters are?
Standout characters.
Because oddly enough, it's not Paul, I would say. Like, Paul was good. Timmy was good as Paul. But, like...
Honestly, like, going into the movie, I was not sure about him as Paul. But as it went on, like, he really fit the character. Like, I was like, how is he going to be, like, turn into this guy that I'm supposed to believe? And, it did what the book does almost. Like, he turns into the guy you believe in.
And I like what you said about how as the movie goes on, because from the beginning he's kind of they kind of make him like a spoiled brat type, and you really do kind of feel for him that he's just destined to be this thing that he doesn't want from two different parties. And
in my head I dubbed him the mopey messiah, because that's what it felt like.
Speaking of Messiah in general, there's a lot of like white savior stuff going on with Dune. Do you, or at least there's an argument for that. How do you feel this handled that? Because Denis said in an interview that he wanted to make sure there was no white saviorness going on in this.
Interesting.
I don't really feel like he avoided the white saviorness of it.
I felt like he kind of leaned into it, to be quite honest. Like, this was you trying not to do that?
Yeah, I that's the only thing I'll say is I feel like there wasn't enough nuance to this. Like, from what I've read in the book, I felt like it was a pretty clear adaptation of it, like a pretty straight adaptation of it. There wasn't enough adaptation in general. Like,
I think for me that's part of the challenge of like trying to evaluate this movie, is having read none of the book whatsoever. Right. There's points where I'm like, all right, I would have done this differently and this differently, and I'm like, how much of this is them just being really, really faithful, and how much of it is like, you know what, maybe you can do this better.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
We talked about a couple weeks ago how, yes, sometimes directors say, oh, we're going to change so much from the book, but it's really just like one small thing.
Or it's things that like you have to be a giant fan of to notice that they're changes. Yeah.
I really feel like, first of all, see this on the biggest screen you can. I wouldn't see this on HBO Max, but I do feel like as long as you have a general understanding about Dune, Arrakis, the characters, I really do feel like you need a general understanding, but you don't need to read the whole book. I think
maybe just like Wikipedia.
Wikipedia, yeah, or just even like read like a plot synopsis or something, maybe, because I feel like then you're kind of caught up, so that when it starts going, you could put enough pieces together. I don't think this is going to confuse people like Tenet did, because Tenet was just overly complicated for no reason.
There's nothing confusing about this. I feel like if you've seen any sci-fi or fantasy story at all, you'll be able to follow along the beats. I thought that, and a lot of people talk about how a lot of stories were inspired by Dune, and I kind of saw that. There were a lot of different points where I'm like, oh, okay, I see the similarity between this and this. And
Star Wars.
Other things, too, that I don't want to spoil, so I'm not going to say what...
Okay.
I'm not going to compare it to properties,
I'm going to have to ask you off camera. I'm serious. But speaking of Star Wars, though, I really do feel like, and I said this off camera to you, I feel like this is kind of what I've always wanted out of Star Wars. Like the politics of Star Wars anyway just always seems so phony to me, and this seems real.
Ooh.
This seems like legit.
How so? Because I thought that was one of the things where...
I mean, they don't talk about like tax federations.
Well,
like,
no, but I thought that they didn't do enough of explaining the power dynamics, and I kind of think this might be one of those things that comes in later on. They kind of talk about...
I think they do a really good job.
They talk about it from a like how it impacts the character standpoint, but like you don't get a sense
what
of like
sides people are on.
Yeah, that's fair. That's pretty easy though. Like
Sure.
you know, I just
What
felt
else do you
like
need, though?
I think it's one of those things where, from a plot standpoint, what's happening, you kind of need to understand the broader powers at play in order to fully appreciate what's happening. And I don't think the movie did that. And I assume the book does. That's why I'm saying that.
Maybe.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, man, I go back and forth on this. Yeah, I feel like they did enough, right?
Okay.
Like, I feel like in the book even, they don't really tell you about like the other houses. Like, you don't hear much of them, but they explain enough that like I feel like they tell you enough.
You learn more, at least from what I know about the book, you learn more based on like the actions of people. Like, oh, okay, that's what that kind of person would do. Like, you know what I mean? It's nothing is really explained to you like.
Yeah, I just felt like the movie did enough for me to understand the plot of the movie and why things were happening, but didn't do enough for me to really, really understand like why the things were happening to the characters, or why are certain characters threatened by certain other characters. You know, I felt like there wasn't enough of that. There wasn't enough of a why. There's just, all right, this is what's happening. Now these are how these characters are impacted.
Yeah.
Maybe the only thing I would be confused on is like the power like hierarchy.
Well, and see, it's not even like a confusion thing, because again, it gives you enough where like, all right, you
you
don't
can
have
put it
questions.
together, but
Yeah,
you think
but-
the average moviegoer kind of would be lost.
I think that they could have done more in terms of fleshing it out. And that's kind of where I was saying, like the beginning of this movie especially, I wanted a lot more fleshing out than what they gave me.
I just think with as many scenes where they're just walking through the desert and stuff,
You could have
would've
cut a
filled-
couple.
No, if you would have filled those with exposition, then every scene would have just felt like walking and talking. And I think there's a reason he did more of like a show not tell type thing. And I'm definitely gonna have to see this movie like 100 more times, because as much as
braver man than me.
as much as I know it's a long movie, I was expecting it to be a lot slower than it was. There are definitely moments where it slows down, but it was really well paced for the beginning. And like, you're not bored the entire time because there's just like beautifulness on screen the whole time. You disagree, Pratik?
I don't disagree. I don't. I do not. It is it's shot very well. The score is great. The acting, no complaints.
Acting's great.
It is again, like I say about a lot of Denis movies, and I feel like we're having the same like argument conversation that we had about Arrival and about Blade Runner 2049, where like it's a very technically well done movie. So,
But the story just didn't do it for you.
not really.
I got you. I got
Yeah.
you.
You know?
I can't really defend the story too much.
It did enough where like, yeah, I want to go back and like I'll read a Wikipedia of what's in the book and be
So
happy.
you're not, but
like,
not enough to see the sequel, or even read.
You're gonna
the book.
make me see the sequel, so but yeah, not enough to read the book. Probably
You're
not.
doing a podcast on your own. Do you review Dune? First of all, Dune or Dune? What do you guys say? Leave it in the comments below. But do you review Dune Part 2?
Probably not.
Okay. And then
We're assuming it gets made, right?
it's getting made. I was about to lead in this. This isn't really a spoiler, but the movie starts off Dune, and then it says Part 1.
Right.
So I imagine the sequel's greenlit, right?
Who knows?
Come on, guys, give us. I really do wish they would have shot this back to back. How awesome would it be? Like next year, Dune Part 2. Like, man, I want that. I want that. I will say, I think Part 2 is going to be a lot more action packed. I think it's going to be a lot quicker. I think there's going to be a lot more of just like. I feel like at the end of this movie, there's a lot of jumping from different places, showing, oh, look what's coming later.
Well, I kind of think that it's we've talked about this off camera, but that's what happens when you split one story into two parts. Is the first part is a lot of setup and setting up threads for things that are going to be resolved in the second part. So usually the second part of any two-parter is more satisfying because it's just resolving things.
I have a feeling I'm going to enjoy this a lot more upon the second watch because I didn't know when it was gonna end the whole movie. I was like, oh god, it's about to end. Oh no, it didn't. Oh, it's about to end. No. So maybe watching it now that I know where it's gonna end, I'm like, okay, I can enjoy this movie for like the amount of time I have it. God, I loved it. Is there anything you want to get into before we score it?
Khori?
Look out for the bath scene. My favorite part of the movie.
Yeah,
all right,
that's Khori's review. Put it on the poster. Look out for the best scene. I think, Pratik, why don't you score first?
Oh, you want to lead with the negativity?
I want a crescendo.
All right. Like I said, it's a very technically well-made movie. This is the challenge in scoring anything is your enjoyment of it versus how objectively good it is. It's very well shot. It's very well scored. The acting is great.
I love how you just like. You very don't want to say these things. It's very well shot.
Very
well scored.
No, I do because again, it's one of those things where I recognize it. It did not add up to an enjoyable experience for me.
As a complete package, it just didn't do it for you.
Not okay. I think what it was a lot of very attractive people doing things on screen that looked very like.
We're reviewing Dune, not Eternals.
That looked very like epic as far as like these are like the movie had this like air of importance to it, but I felt like I was never able to get into the world. I felt like I was never able to really connect with any of the characters. Like I was just kind of a passive observer in their lives. I felt like the Watcher from What If, like through the first couple episodes. Like I was just kind of watching the stuff that happened.
I did feel like an observer watching this, but I feel like
and I think the best stories are the ones that like really like pull you into feeling for the characters, and I just kind of felt like I was watching them, and I think really think that's a real miss here.
I felt like I was watching them. I'll agree with that, but I felt like I was there watching them, not like I was watching on a phone or something or on a screen. Like it felt like I was in the battle. It felt like I was in the heat of all these like political like events happening.
And for that reason, I think that some of the biggest scenes, and there's one in particular that connects to a very well-known property, which I'm not even going to say because it'll spoil, but I was kind of contrasting it because similar things happened, but in the one property you had so much time to like know and love these characters, so then when things happened, like you really feel for it. And here I didn't feel that because I never felt like I really got to know these characters and like love and connect to them. And so like again, I just felt passive a lot of the time. I didn't feel like there was any real like standout. I'm gonna go back and watch like that one scene in particular. Again, with all of that said, technically speaking, it was incredibly well done. So, factoring all of those things into play, I'm going to give it an 8. It was really well done. It was really, really well done, and I can't ignore that. So, it's an 8.
So, regardless of your enjoyability of it, you're going to give it an 8.
Again, it's all about the balance of it. It is so well made. It's if I enjoyed it, this could have been a 10. That's how well made it is.
So you're viewing this as it's an amazing piece of art, but it just didn't speak to you how it should have.
I wouldn't even go so far as art because I think art transcends that. But it's a fantastic technical achievement. Yes.
Fantastic technical achievement. Put it on the poster.
There you go.
Khori.
Please do.
That just I'm honestly surprised by that score. Because I feel like I'm in the middle of both of you right now. Because everybody's going to crucify me for this, but I didn't like the book, quite frankly. The book did not, it's long,
You're not the only person. A lot of people think it doesn't really hold up.
It's hard to sit through, but this felt like everything I could ask for from that book. So that being said, yes, do I wish that they explained a little bit more of the lore and that storytelling, but again, it was such a beautiful movie, and it was a little slow. Maybe too many shots of ships. He was really ooh, these ships.
Because he's using real miniatures for that. It's not just CG and stuff.
Gotta show off that design.
I know. Crazy concepts overall. So I'm gonna give it an 8.
Okay.
All right.
So we're both on 8. I really gotta see it again. Because I can't give it a 10 just yet. I can't give it an 8 either. We sure we're not going to do halves?
I'm positive we're not doing halves.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a 9.
Okay.
I'm really close to giving it a 10 just because I didn't finish the book, but like I said, I'm about 100 pages in, and I feel like I have a general understanding of the book. I'll agree with you, everything I wanted from this. Like, I've been anticipating this movie forever. You know, on our top 10 list of most anticipated movies, this was my number one. For 2 years now, we've been looking for this. We. And honestly, like, for that high of expectations, I really feel like it met them for the most part. Yes, there's scenes that drag, and I wish that this movie had a more clear or better overall message, or like something that was trying to say. But I feel like they really are saving like most of that for the sequel. So just grading this as a movie, I would say, yeah, technically amazing. I would say this is art. I would say this transcends sci-fi, and it's more of just like life, just on a different planet. The only thing that makes it sci-fi is it's a different planet. You know what I mean? Like, they have different technology. Is that the definition of sci-fi? Sure, we could argue about that. But all I'm gonna say is this movie was incredible, and I'll stop so you can go ahead and.
No, I'm not gonna knock your shine.
All I'm saying is this movie is awesome. If you guys were excited for this movie, if you know anything about Dune, or even if you don't, I think this is worth watching, and worth watching in theaters. So definitely see it in theaters, I would say.
Right, you want to take
HBO Max?
No, because if you watch it on HBO Max, you're not going to finish it.
Oh my god. All right, guys. Well, special thanks to Khori Walker for coming in and helping us out with this review.
Thank you, guys.
Signing off for Pratik.
Yeah.
See you guys later.
See ya.